What's going on? Welcome back to the Unqualified Film Bros podcast, and welcome back to Declan, making his triumphant return to the pod.
Hello again.
Um, Tonight we're talking about Arrival, one of my favorite films. I remember seeing it on the big screen, and it was awesome. Ben, we're gonna go to you.
You know,
I want to hear you talk about this film.
I Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorites. He's always been uh really good. Hold on, I'm just trying to recollect my thoughts. Yeah, I mean, a lot of his films are fantastic. He's really well known for taking, these high concept films along with great cinematography. Movies like, Blade Runner 2049, and then now we've got Dune. You can certainly see the similarities that came with Arrival, which was before a lot of those. I believe that was one of his first films in the U.S., I guess, because he had
Is it?
done some.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Arrival was
It's a Quebec
2016.
film.
Blade Runner 2049 was 2017, and then
Yeah.
Dune was 2021.
Yep.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's a fantastic film. It takes a great story from Ted Chiang and sort of just expands on it. The performances are really good. I feel like the visualization and cinematography are fantastic for dealing with this kind of thing. I mean, he's really good. Denis Villeneuve is really good at just somehow getting these great representations of like words. In Arrival, certainly in Dune, and Blade Runner, he does great recreations of what Ridley Scott's original vision was. So, I mean, hats off. Like, it's a great film. And it's more than just sci-fi. There's a personal side to it as well, which I find is probably true with a lot of Ted Chiang's stories. But yeah, I mean, it works great as a sci-fi. It works great as a drama. So yeah, I mean, I liked it. I've seen it before. I'll watch it again. It's a really good movie.
Have you watched it backwards though?
I don't think I can do that. I don't.
No, I was
Like,
thinking sort of after rewatching it today, first time in years as well. Glad I did. Yeah, again, fully agree. This is a fantastic film, and also it works even well, not works better. It's like it's fun. It's a film that even when you know what happens, I feel like like it's still very interesting to watch it again, just because of the themes of the film. But I was slightly thinking that like this film, the fact that it exists is sort of a miracle almost. Like you got this like extremely, like at least on paper, slow like sci-fi story without a lot of action. You got a director from Quebec who I don't know like if he had like credentials or something prior to it, and it's like but
did he do Sicario?
oh, he did Sicario. Okay, yeah.
That's what
Okay, but
earned
still,
him a budget.
yeah, but still,
Yeah, I would say like
like
sometimes you do that.
slow sci-fi doesn't normally sell, especially to money hungry executives. So the fact that they managed to get this done, I feel like is a genuine achievement, and I'm certainly glad that they did. I think it's
Which
fair to
studio was
call.
Which studio was it? I don't remember.
I'm blanking because
Paramount
I
was the
remember
distributor,
Okay.
Paramount.
but it
Okay,
had a bunch
okay.
of, and this kind of threw me off a little bit at the beginning of the film. Is it had a lot of studio logos, and I didn't
I
recognize
was
any of them.
yeah. It's
So
like it's like
a
did
lot
they
of
go
hands,
to
a lot
like
of producers worked on this one. Um, Obviously distributed by Paramount. But yeah, I mean, they took a shot. And Declan, if I could just hop in where you were leaving off, I think
mm,
um, this was my first tour of duty with this film. Y'all know I'm famously late on a lot of movies. 7 years on this one. Um, but sort of intimate sci-fi drama, kind of existentialist, but also kind of, you know, worldly without, laying on the, you know, laying on the cheese too thick with the science fiction concept. They could have gone with, little green men for the aliens. They could have, you know, put us in a position where we were watching something really oaky. And they didn't. And I think what we are left with is a film absolutely deserving of its accolades, of its nominations and awards, and the praise that it's gotten from critics and audiences alike over the last 7 years. It's a
I
good
will
film.
say they couldn't do whatever they wanted because it is an adaptation of it's a short story, but it's still a story. Same as like Blade Runner is a adaptation.
I gotta read this author's works. I just
Okay.
just
Yeah,
No new ideas.
no, I mean it takes a story, like short stories are, the big ideas, and then it creates, characters out of them. So like the Amy Adams character, there's a lot more depth to the characters and not just the story in the movie. And it works like in a grand scale. But I looked it up, and I think the reason it was able to be made is because it was sort of somewhat privately funded, I guess. Indie companies or indie production companies run by like creators. One of them was Sean Levy's company. So
the director.
Right, Levy did work on this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, wow.
Well, he produced it. He didn't necessarily like oversee anything, but he did believe in the vision. And it was only $47 million.
Oh wow.
All these people are shelling out $200 million for like shitty ass, CGI. And then Arrival comes in with a $47 million budget. It's all these great actors in it. And it just looks so good. Like it looks really, really good.
That actually puts it in perspective, like that man, they accomplished it for 47 million.
And yet with such a small budget, relatively speaking, in the science fiction film, there's nothing lackadaisical about this film. We get something that's really, well put together. It's a really smart script with, a handful of elite performances. And, the visuals of a Denis Villeneuve film that we've, grown accustomed to with some of his more recent works, Dune probably chief among them. But, it's for a gamble of a science fiction film based on, the only IP here is a short story. It makes sense that indie filmmakers would go for something like this because it's so fresh compared with how much science fiction has sort of gelled into one sort of formula.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think this is as big of a gamble as you guys think. And they funded Blade Runner after this, Blade Runner 2049. He's done a lot. Like Sicario was a wildly successful film. I don't.
That would have given him.
It's a $47 million budget. That's not very much, and that's including paying for Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner. I think they thought this movie was going to do fine. It did. It did $200 million in the box office.
It's like the fact that it's good is like a bit of a like.
Yeah, I think.
Did the studio executives like realize that they were making a good film or something?
I think it just shows that like the lower the budget is doesn't necessarily mean you're making a bad film. In fact, sometimes, a lot of times, it seems like the lower the budget, the better the film is. But I was going to say, I think the reason that they can keep the budget so low using all these effects is it's kind of a genius character design. It works for aliens. It's a very mysterious design for the spaceship, for the aliens themselves. And it also probably does not require as much, time and money to animate because they're like dark blobs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of details that you need to get right, or that you need to emphasize, that you need to spend a ton of time on and money. And so you can make very convincing things just by thinking, using your brain and making something that is feasible rather than just spending money like an idiot.
Mm.
It's something that like I think movies of old did really well. Certainly things like Star Wars, back in the day, where you really used your brain to make sure you only had so much money,
Mm.
and CGI didn't exist, at least not to the same extent. Certainly had visual effects and stuff, but I like to see creativity. When I see those low budgets, I know that they've actually thought about how we're going to frame this, how we're going to use this money. And sometimes they go over a little bit depending on, reshoots or whatever. But I don't like to see tons of money being spent in films just because I think a lot of the time it makes for a worse film. You're spending so much money and you're losing a part of what makes art good, which is creativity.
Got millions of dollars. What I would do with tens of
Mm.
millions of dollar budget.
Mm.
Putting dreams in my
how
head, Ben.
It's just comparison. I mean, you could easily raise the hundreds of thousands, you know, that a lot of people started back in the day. Some of these,
Easily raise. I had to raise
it's a
7,000 for putt putt.
sorry, when I say easily raise, I mean some of these directors, they literally just put mortgages on their houses and like borrow against whatever they had to get
well,
as,
you have to own a house in order to.
or you could do, I
In
think
this
what
economy,
Guy Ritchie, he borrowed like $5 million from basically the British mob,
Mm.
and made Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
that's such a Guy Ritchie thing to do.
Of course he did.
Especially considering the plot of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is basically he loses a bunch of money, like can't remember how much, but and then he has to basically get it back, or else something bad's gonna happen.
God.
I guess the threat that they gave Guy Ritchie, this movie better do well.
I wonder if while he was making the Aladdin remake, he thought to himself, like, man, I've come a long way. But then
And
again,
this is so great. This
so
movie could
Denis
do
Villeneuve,
terrible.
while he's in the middle of making Dune, probably has thought that as well.
But yeah, he did what is the first films was Incendies. He did Sicario. He did, I think, honestly, probably one of my favorite films of his is Prisoners.
Oh, that is a fantastic
He did
film.
a great job with these emotional screenplays.
Yeah.
Certainly, this is like a sci-fi, but there's a lot more emotion to something like this. This is more of a
Mhm.
slow burn sci-fi than something like even Dune, which has a lot of really complex ideas, but is much more of an action-oriented sort of thing, which I guess is what you were saying earlier, Declan. There's no action. It's a lot more of a just slow burn um, ideas movie.
One of my favorite things just about the film itself is I loved watching the process of trying to communicate with aliens. I feel like that's it's a rarely touched aspect of most sci-fi stories. And no Arrival, it's essentially the entire movie to an extent. And it's I find it fascinating, trying to figure it out, use so many different techniques. I love that aspect of it. And
I,
The answer is given away in the first like 10 minutes.
mm,
Language
yeah,
is the first weapon of war. Yeah, sorry, Ben, go ahead.
well, I really like um, the plot of this film just because it works together so well. I mean, obviously, the idea is you're learning to talk with these aliens, but the broader picture is you're learning to communicate with other humans.
yeah.
Um,
She even
it's very
says
smart.
you can know how communication works and still end up single. I feel like that's almost the thesis statement of the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how quick some people were to go to war, how quick some other people were to believe in each other. That's sort of the
Mhm.
The idea and problem with human like cooperation for the longest time is there are those who are altruistic, and there are those who will use whatever they have for their own gain. And it's sort of the like zero sum theorem comes in. It's like a mutually beneficial relationship between everybody. Everyone gets something out of it. But everyone is acting in their own self-interest. It's a game theory.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's like, and it's also great at like how realistic it feels. Yeah, again, like what you're saying, how realistic it feels, like the sudden shift to a war footing that like everyone like in an instant like stands like suddenly moves to. It's like it's fascinating, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's the perfect example of some of those theories, which is like everyone acts in their own self-interest. If they believe that this person is doing it, it creates a domino effect that it's better for
Mhm.
me to join up
Yeah,
and
I was thinking of
start
straws
cooperating.
from Oppenheimer a little bit, you know, with some of the CIA.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the entire idea behind the Soviet, U.S. like relationship to defeat
Yeah.
Nazi Germany. It's like you're not friends, you just hate that guy. You're doing everything in your own self-interest.
Mm,
Cooperation can sometimes lead to that.
yeah.
Just
The
the
enemy
alien,
of my enemy is my friend.
Mm.
exactly.
It's
And
like
the aliens are doing the same thing. It's not like they're asking to be friends with humanity. They're saying, "Oh, we know what's going to happen. We're giving
3,000 years.
because I need you to help me in 3,000 years."
Yeah. It made me think, I will say one thing that was just like a little bit like it just like whoa, it like hit me in this rewatch is that like they came at this moment kind of I think specifically for Louise. Like I think the implication is that like I don't know, it just like
Well, it
it
seems like she was already. I mean, I don't know how to delve too
mm,
deep into like the science of it, but it seems
mm.
like she was already sort of predisposed to this idea because
Oh yeah.
she sees her daughter like in the beginning, even before
Yeah.
anything happens. And the continuum of the film, which can be confusing considering
Hmm.
the language and the perception of time thing, but I believe like she's having visions of her daughter even before she meets the
Yeah.
aliens.
I think the idea is sort of that because learning the language makes you
Yeah,
experience time non-linearly, like that's seeping into her entire life, you know.
yeah.
The the future because the language fundamentally changes
Like
the
you
experience.
either know or you do not. Correct.
Exactly.
Also, this is a actually similar thing to Dune, because they have this idea where you basically once you get to a certain level, if you're the oh god, what's the savior the savior that they call it. We'll talk
Messiah?
about this in Dune Part Two.
Oh,
But
no.
you basically access this like plane where all your relatives live. I guess same with the Black Panther and their idea there.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a cool idea, which is like
I just
learn.
want us, Ben, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want us all to acknowledge how Ben physically cringed when he referenced a Marvel film. It's like we're talking about Dune and Black Panther.
First one's good. I just like it's not Dune.
Like he
But
stabbed like a table. No, I'm kidding.
First Black Panther movie is better than the first Dune movie. I said what I said.
Oh my gosh, no. You know, one thing. Can I pose a question to you guys? You know, as I was watching this film, a hypothetical came to me. Watching Amy Adams's performance here, you know, I feel like she does, I think, magnificent job, and she's, I think, all around a great actress, you know, and all that. My question is to paraphrase the anecdote, the tweet about Jack Black and Orson Welles. Could could Amy Adams play Lydia Tarr, and could Kate Blanchett play Louise in this film? What do you guys think? That idea came to me while I was watching.
I don't know why you're asking this, but probably not to both of those.
Mhm.
They're different types of actors. Like Kate Blanchett can be a much more like intimidating force on screen, and Amy Adams is much more of a sympathetic character, at least
Hmm.
typically. Not to say that they can't, that they're actors, they can do whatever they want. But
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Like the
I
persona also.
guess if you're gonna ask me that question, that would be my answer. I don't know why I'm answering this question.
Haven't seen Tar, no comment.
Okay. Okay. You see, I got flashes in the future for when we do a Tar episode. No, I'm kidding.
Declan,
When
that
my
movie came
Maxwell
out a year
Benjamin.
ago.
If you win, are you going to pick Tar? Is that your next movie?
No, probably not. But I mean, but I do. I rewatching it. I enjoyed it even more. So who knows? Maybe.
I'll be honest. I think like I liked it, but not that much.
Interesting.
I'm not
I
a drama person.
the rewatch enhanced my opinion of Tar, much like a rewatch enhanced my opinion of Arrival.
Speaking of Arrival,
Amadeus.
Amy Adams.
Yeah.
Declan, you brought her up. Why don't you actually talk about Amy Adams?
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was trying to. The idea came to me while I was watching it. Anyway, I think Amy Adams, like, it's such a difficult thing to do. Like, or well, no. Let me like start this over. It's such a strange thing how she has to play someone who we believe lost her daughter but didn't actually lose her daughter yet, and that's like a twist. Like that's a tightrope to walk, like, and I think she pulls it off like extremely well. Like, I would say it's a twist that like her daughter does is not like isn't born yet, like, and that Jeremy Renner is the father, because like, you aren't expecting that to be the case.
Right, but it's more so I think that she has to now live with the burden of knowing that her sort of path is set,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she can't really deviate.
Mhm.
Especially when, as a linguist, her whole study is of the infinite combinations and possibilities of words, images, and gestures that can make up a conversation and a language. I mean, you look at the way that they've visualized the sentences and the circles and the words. It's not just one circle representing one word. It's one circle representing complex thoughts and sentences in an
Mhm.
infinite number of combinations that they've only scratched the surface of in a few months.
Mhm.
But she's now confined to this one path of becoming a mother, knowing that she's going to lose her daughter, and then knowing that she's going to lose her husband or the father of her child, because she knew what was going to happen and didn't say anything.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's like she had to in order to, like, I think the implication is she had to in order to allow what she needed to learn to happen, almost,
And
They
that sort of
say
brings us to like a common theme throughout science fiction, especially when it comes to time travel movies. Like Back to the Future is a key example. Is the future already written,
Mhm.
and can it be changed? And
yeah.
I
Well,
think the point being made by Arrival is, in this world as it's presented in this film, yeah, it's set in stone, it's written, and we just have to live with it and accept it.
Mhm.
And I think that, what we get from Louise as she sort of comes to this realization at the end of the film is, she's sort of got this conundrum of whether or not she wants to accept or reject what is already laid out for her.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, she's forced to accept because it's just the way things are. Can't do anything about it, can't change it. And I think it presents the question of, or at least it presents the question to the audience of, You know, how would you react if you knew what your path was? Would you want it to be changed? Would you want to be burdened with the knowledge?
Mm,
And it's sort of ambiguous isn't the right word, but it sort of leaves you with a sort of incomplete feeling.
yeah. The story almost becomes the perspective of not like literally the perspective of the aliens, but like this, like as the film goes on, it like I think becomes more of like trying to like through filmmaking have us experience the nonlinear story or something like that, or like how time would be perceived non-linearly, like with like the almost like the flashing, not flashing, the like cutting between the past and the future as they do, and her using the future to get the information she needs. I feel like that's like such a unique storytelling technique, unlike any other that I've seen. And
I will say it is it's been used before. Not to say that it's not a great idea, but they say time is a circle. That's I believe why they use circles to use their language, because obviously time is ingrained in their language. But it also paints the idea that there is no beginning and there is no end. Like Amy Adams' character says in the beginning,
Mm,
you can't find where something begins and where something ends. It's all just existing. So it doesn't matter what you choose. This is an idea of like predetermination,
mm.
uh, which is very, if I recall, it's a very Buddhist like notion of predetermination.
Oh my gosh,
Uh,
is a rival Calvinist propaganda?
with that, there's a few, religions that talk
Mm,
about that, and then there's also the choices that you make. Which is which is the beginning, which is the end. Are you forced to do something? Do you still choose, even though you know the outcome? It's a very, I mean, it asks a lot of questions. I don't think you're supposed to like. It's not supposed to answer any of them, which is my
mm,
favorite sci-fi. Like, I don't know that there is an answer to this sort of type of movie,
mm.
especially any time you deal with time. I feel like that
Yeah.
gets confusing real fast. But I feel like it's a great example of logical time travel. Back to the Future is fun, but it doesn't make any damn sense. Marvel doesn't make any damn sense. There are those people who like the multiverse theory that are weird theoretical scientists, but like it's a more far out notion than something like this would be, at least
Yeah.
logically.
Um, you talk about, Ben, the idea of time travel in science fiction. Um, one movie, and Max, I texted you about this right as I finished the movie. Um, this film reminded me of Interstellar
Mm,
in
yeah.
its conclusion. Just the third act with the sort of discovery of the core tenet concept, Christopher Nolan reference, that we have, you know, when you learn the language, you can perceive time in a nonlinear way. That's the uh, the tipping point for this film, is that as an audience member, you got to accept that's the fact. And in Interstellar, when Cooper ends up in the fifth dimensional tesseract thing, interacting with time and space, that's how the movie is going, and we as the audience have to accept that that is the fact of the movie. That's how things work. And
I, I
I
don't think that I have to accept that.
Mhm.
Choose
all
not
right,
to.
Ben chooses not to accept that. I choose to accept um your mission, whether you or should you choose to accept it. Great
Yeah,
movies.
just
Um
about to go to Chris Nolan's house and like debate.
but anyway,
It's
um
not scientifically accurate.
we could do a whole series of episodes on Christopher Nolan, and I'm sure we will at some point once we run out of ideas. But or once the strike
Once the
impacts
the
too
strike
many
drought becomes real.
I got plenty of movies that we can watch.
please pay your writers. Please support the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. Anyway, what we get from Interstellar and Arrival is a film, or are two films that I think perhaps collapse a little too far in on themselves with their concepts and what we as the audience are expected to do in terms of surrendering or suspending our disbelief. And even though that's the case, I am willing to suspend my disbelief and go along with these sort of high concept science fiction ideas as they're presented in the films, because without them, the story doesn't work.
I just want to point out that like Arrival is much more like possible theoretically than Interstellar's fifth dimension doorways.
If there is a collapsing, I think Interstellar's collapsing is a bit bigger.
Yeah, like I feel like Arrival is
it's
elegant with its sci-fi. It's like it works for what it needs to. It doesn't question itself. It's much more about the ideas. It's sort of like
Interstellar is epic science fiction. Arrival is drama told through the lens of science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, take it like a Blade Runner versus a 2001. They're different sci-fis. One of them is much more focused on the effects of certain technologies, or the effects of certain ideas, like aliens coming and giving this theoretical situation. And then Interstellar is much more like, I guess 2001 has, that may be a bad example, but something.
I was thinking, like, man, you choose two.
I'm trying to think of like I don't know, like a Forbidden Planet or something. That's a little
or like Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Star Trek or something, but
the Star Trek is never
like it's a Forbidden Planet, one of those old like sci-fi, but like really updated, great CGI. But it's meant to be grounded in science in the beginning, it really feels like, and then it loses itself a little bit at the end, going to the fifth dimension doorways or whatever. But I mean, that's fine. But I just wanted to point out, like, I think Arrival is much more elegant. I don't think it really collapses on itself.
It's more elegant, it's more nuanced for sure. But just to get back to Max's question about Amy Adams,
she's good.
I for a long time only ever saw her as Amy Adams. Whether it was, I'm drawing a blank on so many of her performances.
Man of Steel.
Yeah, I mean, even as Lois Lane in Man of Steel and Justice League.
You're gonna say Giselle in Enchanted.
Yeah.
Giselle in Enchanted. I saw her at, honestly, when I first knew who Amy Adams was, that was the first thing I knew her from. And it took me a while to not see her as Giselle, but then I just saw her as Amy Adams.
I'm picking that next time I win.
Oh yeah.
I want to win. I only won trivia once. I want to do one of these episodes again. But anyway, she, in Her is a great film. Declan, I know that's one of your favorites.
Yeah.
But her performance in that film, her performance here, she is a very, very talented actress. And I think in a performance that calls upon her to pull from something so emotional as losing a child, whether it's happened or not in your perception of this story. And the bulk of the plot, it's ambiguous whether it's happened yet or not until we know that it hasn't happened yet. She delivers an outstanding performance. And, she carries scenes where she's acting opposite, Forrest Whitaker and Jeremy Renner and Michael Stuhlbarg, who are all talented actors in their own right, and they all deliver great performances. But Amy Adams, far and away the best performance in this film.
Jeremy Renner, some of his lines are feel are like lines that
It's
people
levity.
accuse Marvel movies as having.
Jeremy Renner's lines here and some of his dialogue, Declan, I know exactly which ones you're talking about too.
Yeah.
He said, okay, so that just happened.
Yeah, like I think like someone pointed out, like, guys, that's where they said that. Marvel has never actually said that, which I was like, my mind was blown when I learned that.
But still, in a dramatic film such as this one, moments of levity, and I'm not saying Jeremy Renner is a comic relief character or anything,
No.
but moments of levity, moments where you can be a little bit more lighthearted, because these are just two people experiencing a situation as it unfolds. Humans are going to make light in certain scenarios. And I think, part of what makes Ian such a well-rounded character is that he can do the dramatic, but also he is willing to look at the bright side and sort of see moments where, like, aliens have come to Earth, and that is fucking wild. But he's sort of able to look at it both through a logical lens and maybe a little bit more of that fantastical lens, more so than, say, Amy Adams or Forrest Whitaker. There's a sense of wonderment about his character almost.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I always looked up at the stars, but really, the most important thing was.
Oh my god, that was the cheesiest line. Get it out of there. Wow. I think I had to subtract a star for that one. I updated it to 5 stars, and I'm thinking now I have to put it back down to 4.5. Just that one line.
Just because of that one line.
It's a very bad line.
You know what, Ben? I was between a 4 and a 4.5, and I gave it the boost. I know I said in my Letterboxd review that it was because of all the different technical aspects and the cast. No, I gave it the boost to 4.5 because of that one goddamn line.
This moment is
You're just going to use that on his next date.
The thing is,
stargazing.
that feels totally realistic for a guy to say to a girl when he's hitting on her. Like, yeah, I'm just saying.
I'll be honest, Jeremy Renner is entirely way too comfortable with social scenarios to be a theoretical physicist.
Oh shit, that's.
I had a hard time believing Jeremy Renner is a nerd.
Yeah.
That's like trying to believe that Henry Cavill is Clark Kent. Come on.
Hey, Henry Cavill would work because he is a nerd.
Well, yeah, but just like his physical appearance, he doesn't.
Yeah. No, like
have that
the idea.
We are judging the hell out of these books by their covers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it from us. So I think that's gonna do it tonight. We've
Hold
got
on. Hold on.
Oh,
I apologize, George.
Max, why'd you pick this movie? Why is this one of your favorite movies of all time?
Because I won.
Because I won.
Because I won. You guys
I'm the best.
I picked it. And this is a whole nother discussion, which I purposefully left out, but it's because of the timing that it came out. It was 2016, and because of the geopolitical stuff that was going on in 2016. The time when I watched it, I think it was probably, when it came out. I saw it in theaters. So when I forget what month it was, but
I want to say summer.
Sure, whatever.
I don't know. Yeah.
Sometime in 2016. But I mean, just thinking about it, especially now after all of the time that's passed between then the last time I watched it and this time I watched it, it's just fascinating to think about the way that countries and entities communicate with one another, or how they don't, and how quickly it can happen. And so it feels a bit like a warning. Maybe a little bit less so now, for whatever reason. But just fascinating on how communication can break down so quickly, just based off of one word.
Right on.
This the
Right on.
stakes of kind of what we're living in right now.
Like, yeah, the theme of communication is, yeah, it's so good. It's so well integrated into the story. Like, yeah.
All right, you can proceed with the wrap up. I'm done.
Okay, cool. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight. That was lovely. Thank you, gentlemen. We've got a really special episode for you next week. It will be our 100th episode on the pod together. I'm not going to tell you exactly what we're doing, but it's going to be fun because George said it would be fun. So if it isn't, then you can.
Could that face lie to you?
All right. Good night.
No,
See you.
Good night.
I try to be honest. Okay, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.